over-endowed for survival. And the point here is, under Darwinian principles, anything that's of excess or waste or useless would get quickly weeded out. And yet these properties persisted until the 20th and 21st century, when we finally needed them, showing that God anticipated in advance that we would be able to take advantage of these over-endowments to launch and sustain high technology civilization. And the point is this: when we human beings showed up on the terrestrial scene, we had weak muscles, a poor sense of smell, rather a poor eyesight and a hearing. We couldn't run fast. We were in big trouble given the big predators that we had to survive in the environment with. And what we had instead was a cranial capacity that was designed for other things. And the point here is the human brain's at the maximum size. You can't make it any bigger than it is. So in order to make room for things like mathematics and the ability to type 100 words a minute and to play a Liszt piano concerto and to engage in worship and philosophy and meditation, it's necessary that you sacrifice brain tissue that would be used for survival purposes and reserve it for future technological civilization and advancement. And so we can't run as fast as the other animals, we can't smell, we can't see very well or hear very well, but we're able to do all these amazing things. But my point is, all of this stuff was useless at the moment that human beings showed up on the terrestrial scene. And the Bible even gets right the story of human origins and the right date. For example, you can take the genealogies in Genesis 5 and 11, and you can calibrate them. You can calibrate them because we have established dates for when Abraham lived and when Peleg lived. Abraham, we have both biblical and extra-biblical historical records that place him as living 4,000 years ago. Genesis 10, 25, and 26, the world was divided in the days of Peleg. That's a reference to the breaking of the great land bridges, which we can date to 11,000 years ago. If he lived 11,000 years ago and Abraham 4,000 years ago, the lifespans recorded in the text are proportional to the passage of time. That roughly places Noah about 40,000 years ago, and Adam and Eve somewhere around 60,000 years ago, plus or minus about 30,000 years. And today we have mitochondrial DNA dating techniques that establish that the first woman lived about 50,000 years ago. Y chromosome data that tells us the first man lived 50,000 years ago. And the significant point there, it also establishes the entire human species is descended from one man and one woman that lived near the juncture of Africa, Asia, and Europe 50,000 years ago. In the scientific literature, they refer to this as the Garden of Eden hypothesis. They refer to the first man as the Y chromosome Adam, and the first woman is the mitochondrial DNA Eve, because of how closely it matches what the Bible teaches. Now, point number 3. Christianity explains what happened to the body of Jesus. And there are 4 options with respect to the historical record. By the way, that's a shot of Golgotha, the hill where Jesus was crucified, and right by it is what's referred to as a garden tomb, what many actually believe is a tomb in which Jesus was buried. But we have 4 possibilities concerning his body. The disciples stole the body, the Romans stole the body, the Pharisees stole the body. In terms of somebody running off with a body, those are your 3 options. Neither one of these options is historically credible. The disciples were few in number. They were not trained in military exploits, and to steal the body, they would have to overcome a cohort of Roman guard soldiers. And in Roman law, those soldiers were required to defend what they were guarding to the death, and if they didn't, they would be crucified. And so the idea that 11 disciples with no training could overcome such a guard is simply preposterous. Then people have said, well, the Romans stole the body, or the Jews or the Pharisees stole the body. If that's really the case, they would have simply produced the body to put an end to the Christian faith, because after all, they were enemies of this new emerging faith. Which leaves you one fun option: he really did rise bodily from the dead. If not, somebody would have produced the body, and that never happened. Some additional pieces of evidence in favor of this is the fact that 500 eyewitnesses are recorded in the biblical text as seeing the resurrected Jesus. Now the fact is we have Bible manuscripts that date back to the 1st century, and the idea that 500 eyewitnesses could fraudulently claim to see it when in fact they didn't simply wouldn't have stood up, given the fact that they made these claims within the same century which the writings were made. And also, in spite of great persecution, half of the population of Jerusalem became Christian shortly after Jesus was crucified. As I already mentioned, we have Bible manuscripts that date back right to that time, portions of manuscripts from the Gospels, and you really can't pull off a fraud in the very same time in which the event took place. And all but one of the disciples were executed for their faith in the resurrected Christ. People will not martyr themselves for a lie. Number 4, Christianity explains the problem of evil. And my point here is that humanity's evil by far defies naturalistic explanation. How do you explain an Adolf Hitler, or a Mao Zedong, or a Joseph Stalin? They killed tens of millions of people each. They killed their own people. They did evil things that in no way benefited their agenda. It makes no rational sense. And it's completely different from what we see in the rest of the plant and animal kingdom. We human beings are appallingly evil to such a degree that it's impossible to explain by a naturalistic mechanism. We're also marvelously virtuous. We display a level of virtue and personal sacrifice that is beyond what any naturalistic explanation. How do you explain human altruism, where people will die for their fellow men, fellow creatures that they don't even have any relationship with, kin relationship with? The point here is that neither mankind's virtue nor evil is explained except from a good God opposed by a supernatural evil being, where God uses the evil that that being is promoting and the physics of the universe to prepare humans to receive rewards in the new creation. What's unique about Christianity, it's a 2 creation model, not a 1 creation model. The universe is here to bring about the end of all evil. After that is a new creation where evil will never exist again. What I'm explaining here is that by exposing humans to the greatest possible evil and by helping them pass this most difficult test, God grants receptive humans an eternal deliverance from evil while enhancing their freedom of will. The big debate, does God predetermine everything or does he give us freedom of will? He does both. And that's easily explained in the context of the 9 space dimensions and the 3 time dimensions that astrophysics has recently established. Let me give you an analogy here. I have a PhD degree in astronomy. The little piece of parchment the University of Toronto gave me guarantees that never again will I have to be tested for my competency in astronomy. And it's based on the myth that my professors subjected me to the most difficult test possible in astronomy. And hence it's pointless to put me to an additional test. Likewise, it's no accident that evil comes to us through God's most powerful created being, meaning that we're being subjected to the most difficult test. But God is there to help us pass that most difficult test. And if we receive this help, we can pass, and we pass that most difficult test, never again can anything more challenging ever threaten us, and hence we can go into the new creation fully trained and prepared to receive the rewards there without any possibility of anyone using their free will to bring about evil intent. In fact, in the new creation, our free will will be delivered from the restraints of the physics of the universe. As I'll be explaining tomorrow, the physics of the universe is primarily in place, partly in place, to restrain the expression of human evil. Let me give you a quick summary of how this works. This is a quick outline of the 2 creation model. And that's really what separates the Christian faith from other faiths. Like in Mormonism, they promise a reward that's basically within this cosmos. You see the same thing within Hinduism and Buddhism. But in Christianity, it promises a completely different new creation once this creation has fulfilled its purpose. It's a 2 creation model. God creates and designs this universe of earth for human beings. He places Adam and Eve in paradise, and he allows humans to be tested by evil. Keep in mind, he had the option to keep out the guy in the red union suit for all of eternity. He didn't do that. He opened the gate to the Garden of Eden and invited Satan to come in. because he had a good purpose in allowing that to happen. Through the test,